A quarter. At $300 a bid, not 3 1/4 anywhere. Going once.
There's no other words to describe it. A gallery of this caliber representing this type of art is long overdue in Toronto.
We're going once, twice, 425. What's your number, sir? Number 4, come forward with some money.
Motoring 91 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
The sign says it all. We are outside a police compound today. Now, this is where you don't want to find your car because it usually ends up here in the back of a tow truck and you have to spend a lot of money to claim it back. Well, today we've discovered that there are a lot of people inside this compound today, but they're not here to claim back their car. No, they're here to buy a car, and that car could be yours.
That's half the rat caps inside it.
Well, we're having our public auction, and we have a police compound here. Cars are brought in off the streets, and once we have them over 60 days, we have to sell them to the public auction, to general public on an auction. We have 120 cars here today. They go from anywhere from a 67 to an 87.
Now, can they test drive these cars? What are the rules?
No, when these cars come in, there's no keys. We have a locksmith here that will make keys up the day of the auction. So we don't know if they run or anything. We just know that they're not claimed. So they go on the auction block as is, where is.
Despite the frigid temperature, close to 400 bargain hunters showed up, including Motoring 91's Graham Fletcher. Graham, what brings you here to this auction today?
Looking for something cheap and cheerful to get me through the winter.
Is this a good place to buy a car or not?
Well, the price is generally right here. I mean, these cars are going to go for a song. You've got to certify them and everything else, but you'll get a very good deal here for sure.
Okay, obviously there's no guarantees, but can you give us just a couple of pointers that people should look for if they're looking for a car at an auction?
Well, this one's got the original paint on it, so you can tell exactly how much rust is on the body, and there's very little on this one. The engine looks fairly clean, so it doesn't look like it's going to need too much work doing to it. The car is actually quite nice shape. Inside, you know, you're looking at the odometer. If the odometer's got 50,000 K on it, the wear factors should equate to that. You know, if the brake pedal rubber, if the corner's worn right off, it normally indicates it's 150 to 250,000 K. And if a car has that sort of mileage on it, and it's the original engine and stuff like that, you're looking, that's the end of its natural life. So you'd be looking at putting an engine in, which for an old banger like that, it's not what you want to be doing.
What are you checking for?
Floors. The floors.
Make sure they're not rusted?
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't buy, when they buy these cars, right, they don't pop the back seats. And there's like rust in here, right?
Have you ever got a deal on an auction? Good spot to get a car?
Yeah, really.
Not really here.
Not really here.
Some of them are pretty good.
Yeah.
They don't start them here.
Yeah, they can't start them or test drive them, eh? That's the problem.
First of all, tell me what you're out here looking for.
A nice small car, something that works great, and something that doesn't have to need much body work because it's too cold to do it. And I do body work, and I got a painter. He paints for a living. He's got his own shop. So we're looking for something just nice. And he's looking for something for his daughter, too.
So you can find something here that you can take away and drive for a while.
Oh, yeah. Easy. You look at them, you see what's underneath them, what's on, how the motor's on. I don't care about a door or something like that. There you can replace a door. Mm-hmm. But the motor and all that's all right. The body's not too bad. That's all you look for. Tires, hey, the brakes, and the motor. Like, I think the motor's screwed in this, but the body-wise, it's good. I'd throw another motor in this, wouldn't you? Look at the body.
Well, it's very simple. You sign in, get a number, and then you stand there and wait until the item comes up, the car that you want comes up, and then you put your hand up. And you leave it up there until I tell you to put it down.
What kind of prices are we looking at?
Oh, everything starts at usually $65 base price, which is the price that the scrap people pay for these cars. So they don't really care whether they're working or not. They'll pay $65 just to tow it away.
450 anywhere, going once, twice, 425. What's your number, sir? Number 4, come forward with some money. Hurry up. It's snowing, you guys, haven't you noticed? Anybody know what year this is? Number 7.
If you don't want this, can we do that?
79? All right, I'll believe you. What should we say if I don't give me $100 for it started away? $100 all over the place. At $100 of it now 1 1/4. 1 1/4 now 1 1/2. 125, 150 now 175. 150 now 175. At $200 of it now 2 1/4. At $200 of it now 2 1/4. At $200 of it now 2 1/4 anywhere. Going once. Twice, 2 1/4. New bidder now 2 1/2. At $250 now 275 anywhere. Going once. Twice. 275 now 300. At $275 is all I'm bidding at $300 anywhere. Put your hands up. $300 a bid at 3 1/4. Do as you're told. $75 a bid to 100. At $75 a bid to 100.
So how long does it take to put the new lock in so you can give them new keys?
I don't put a new lock in. I take this one out and there's a code on it, and I cut a key from the code. It takes me about 15 minutes a car. Just to pull it all out, cut the key and put it back in, unless I run into problems, which quite often you do.
Then they just start it and they drive away.
Well, if it'll start.
Stick around, because when we come back, we've traded the pylons in for the great outdoors.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
No skid pad or pylon test this week, because we're out in the countryside to fully evaluate this vehicle, the 1991 Isuzu Rodeo. The styling of the new Rodeo is appealing, to say the least. Its bold body lines impart a tough, rugged look, yet there is enough subtle sex appeal to make it attractive. Inside you will find a full complement of comfort and convenience. The dash is complete and easy to interpret, and the heater, cruise, light and wiper controls are well placed and easy to operate. Even the door-mounted power window controls fall readily to hand. The only place the design misses the mark is the radio location. It is much too far below the driver's line of sight and beyond your normal reach. The front seats are generally comfortable, although I found the seat base a little on the short side. This deprives you of any decent thigh support. In the rear there is enough room to party. The head and leg room provided is more than generous. The 60-40 split folding rear seat provides the required versatility, and they also feature headrests, which is a plus in this style of vehicle. If you have a young child and use a rearward facing car seat, make sure that the seat bases are locked fully, because if they don't, the seat belt that holds it in place is useless. Something typical of the last few GM vehicles we've tested is that there's no locking gas cap, and the styled alloy wheels also lacked locking wheel nuts, something I would suggest you invest in, because these rims and tyres are going to cost you a pretty penny if somebody pinches them. Our Rodeo LS featured automatic locking front hubs, but it lacks a shift on the fly feature. This means you must bring the vehicle to a full stop before nudging the transfer case lever into four-wheel drive. The 4-speed automatic features 3 modes: normal, power and winter. The normal and power modes are used in the same manner as any other driver selectable transmission. The winter mode is rather unique. When activated, it locks the transmission in 3rd gear. Now this should only be used in extremely slippery going, where pulling away even in 4-wheel drive would be nearly impossible. To be quite frank, I found it a rather redundant feature. The Rodeo's power is supplied by a GM-sourced 3.1-litre V6 engine that produces 120 horses and 165 pounds-feet of torque. While these values are not particularly high, they do give the truck reasonable pickup, and it cruises very well at highway speeds. Off-road, the engine provided ample power, managing to climb some steep grades with surprising ease. As far as the suspension goes, you'll find leaf springs in back and torsion bars up front. Despite the antiquated design, it does nonetheless provide a high degree of comfort.
On the road it handles all but large bumps with great aplomb, and the amount of body lean is kept within acceptable limits. Every so often the risk of rollover associated with this type of vehicle rears its ugly head. In short, if driven properly, they do not represent a hazard, period. You wouldn't try and drive a family sedan like an Indy car, and so as long as you don't try and drive these things like a sports car, you won't find yourself in an inverted position. My pet peeve on the Rodeo is to do with the tyre. You can drop your parcels in through the opening glass portion nice and easily. However, to get them out, you've got to swing this thing out of the way and then drop the tailgate. It just makes things altogether too difficult for my liking. Now to the scoreboard for the verdict on the 1991 Isuzu Rodeo. Given the high centre of gravity, antiquated suspension design and vague on-centre feel offered by the steering, I was extremely surprised at just how well-mannered the Rodeo proved to be, both on and off-road. It just goes to show, new isn't always better. The brake pedal feel is fine, and with the rear anti-lock brakes to take care of the vehicle's weight bias, there weren't any anxious moments during some pretty rigorous testing. Given the vehicle's intended use, the performance offered by the engine can be considered adequate. We required close to 15 seconds to reach 100 kilometers an hour. We recorded 74 decibels of noise at highway speed, which, all things considered, is quite quiet. We consumed an average of 14.9 litres per 100 kilometers or 19 miles per gallon. In this market segment, this type of fuel consumption is about the norm. The new Rodeo is a vehicle that is going to become a force to be reckoned with in the burgeoning sport utility market. Aside from a few minor quibbles, I enjoyed the time I spent with this vehicle immensely, something I can't say about all of the cars I test.
Well, as you can see, they're auctioning off more than just cars here at the pound. We've got motorcycles, and over here we have, that's right, a boat with real wood. But the rules remain the same with the boats. You cannot test drive them. So I would suggest to the new owner that when they launch this baby in the summertime, that they stick real close to the shore. It's now time to join our favorite mechanic, Bill Gardner.
Four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive vehicles have become increasingly popular in the last few years. And believe me, if you've ever gone through a Canadian winter with a four-wheel drive vehicle, you'll never want to go back to a conventional two-wheel drive vehicle. But these vehicles are very similar in many respects to their two-wheel drive counterparts, but there's a few key differences, and that's what we want to have a look at. Now, we're underneath a Chevy Suburban four-wheel drive, and that started out life as a rear-wheel drive truck, and they grafted on a front drive system. Many of today's minivans and smaller cars started life as front-wheel drive, and they grafted on a rear drive system. On this particular vehicle, you can see a solid rear axle, just like a rear-wheel drive vehicle would have, and this is lubricated with 80W90 gear lubricant. You can see on the four-wheel drive model that they've added a vent hose and brought the vent up about 15 inches above the axle so that this vehicle can go through quite deep water without contaminating the rear axle. Now, it's important to note here that on any vehicle, if you've gone through deep water, have your axle and transmission lubricants checked for fluid contamination. If they've become contaminated with water, the axle oil will look cloudy or milky looking. Now, we can see here a conventional single cardan U-joint, and on a four-wheel drive vehicle, you're going to have grease fittings in these joints, and you're going to find more of these kind of joints because you've got two drive shafts. Moving along this shaft, we can see that at the transfer case end, we've got a plunge joint and a grease fitting for it right there, and another single cardan U-joint. And the transfer case right here is the heart of the four-wheel drive system. It takes the power that comes out of the transmission and splits it in two directions to go to the front and rear axles. And we can see here a double cardan U-joint on the front drive shaft, and that takes a special fitting to lubricate. And at the back, the single cardan U-joint we already mentioned. Moving along that front drive shaft, we've got another plunge joint right here with a grease fitting. You can see the plunge action right there, and it's polished up that part of the shaft that it moves on. Another single cardan U-joint, and a conventional solid axle. This axle would also be lubricated with 80W90 gear lube. Now, out at the front wheels, we're going to find another set of universal joints to allow those wheels to turn and pivot as well as drive the front wheels. And we can see a special grease fitting. It's very hard to see, but if you look in there, you can see it. and it's a little check ball. You need this special tool to engage it, and this threads on the end of your grease gun and lubricates that joint. We've got a number of tie rods and suspension joints that can also be lubricated with this tool or a conventional grease gun. Now, as rugged a vehicle as this is, it's also vulnerable to damage if you don't know how to drive it properly. You can see that this tie rod between the front wheels here is crowned or bent up. Now, that's because it's hit an object and damaged it. It's caused the toe to move in, so the alignment's out on this vehicle. So it's important to remember that when you're driving a vehicle like this, if you want to pass over a large obstacle, put the tire over it. Don't try and straddle it or you'll damage something. It's also important with these vehicles to remember their straight line traction is fantastic. They'll go through 1.5 feet of snow without any problem, but it's much more difficult to stop and turn them. They're only about 10% better than a conventional two-wheel drive vehicle. So don't overdo it and get too rambunctious or you'll smash that vehicle up. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 91.
This has been going on for quite a while. I don't like to look at this as a trendy thing. We have people that are sincerely interested in purchasing automotive art.
If you have any comments or suggestions, drop us a line at Motoring 91, Post Office Box 284, Station J, Toronto, Ontario, M4J 4Y1.
Well, this past week, our Steve Grant said he wanted to go to the art gallery, take a camera, and do a story for the program. I said, Steve, this show was all about automobiles, and you're not going to find any cars in an art gallery. He said, Brad, trust me. Well, I did. So let's find out what he was up to.
People don't buy cars like this because they're comfortable to get around town in. They buy cars like this because they're status symbols, because they're perceived as being beautiful. And they buy cars like this because they can afford to buy them. That's when cars go well beyond transportation and become collectibles or pieces of art. Now, if you can't afford a piece of art like this for your driveway, you might want to consider something for your living room.
The steering wheel, I do much better than I do the steering.
It was a natural. Scott Goodyear, a man who makes a living racing cars, opening Canada's first ever art gallery dedicated entirely to the automobile.
The idea actually came across a long time ago. I've always had to travel abroad to find various pieces of automotive art. We never had a representation here in Canada or in the Toronto area. And going to various events and getting there and finding out that the pieces have already been sold out really disturbed me. So in time I decided there was only one way to go about this, and that was to open a gallery and have it available for all the enthusiasts out there. We have some fantastic Canadian artists that are recognized world-round. We have Jay Coca, who does beautiful work in Ferraris. We have Terry Thompson that depicts many different race scenes. We have Paul Butleva, who lives in Vancouver, who also loves to do portrait shots of drivers and race scenes also.
It's wonderful. There's no other words to describe it. A gallery of this caliber, representing this type of art, is long overdue in Toronto. You can go to New York and see this, you can go to Chicago and see this, in Paris, most of the major international cities, and it's long overdue in Toronto. In the last 2 years, one original painting of the entire production has been sold in Canada. But I think that in many ways it's much like entertainment, movie stars, musicians. Sometimes you have to go outside of your own country, establish some type of a reputation, and then you'll do a little bit better in your own.
The investment quality of this art is phenomenal. You take a worldwide market and you look at how many people collect automotive art. We only have approximately 24 people representing the automotive art market. Most limited editions only come out in issues of about 1,000. Therefore, these 1,000 issues are sold throughout the whole world and are very quickly bought up. And when they go into the secondary edition, if you missed the opportunity of buying the first piece, now you have to pay the price of the market. And as far as investment opportunity goes, most of these pieces appreciate approximately 10% per year. This here is my most prized possession. This piece here was commissioned by Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 1984 for their poster series. There's only 17 of these pieces ever made. This piece here is number 6 of 17. The unique part about the number being that the number 6 car won in 1984. This is also the piece for what they do the commemorative poster for.
Now, if I had brought my checkbook today, what would I have to put on the line to buy this?
This piece here is $18,000 and a sound investment. What makes a painting valuable? Some of the pieces that we have are signed by the drivers, the original autographs, and again, if a driver should change a team or should he have an unfortunate accident, it automatically escalates the price of the painting. And the painting, again, as far as value escalation goes, it's just a supply and demand of the marketplace. And every year there's a greater demand for automotive art.
Sometimes your car heater just isn't enough. So on those really cold days, you can bring your own heat. It's more than an attractive cushion. This seat support plugs into your cigarette lighter. And presto, hot pants. The sizzling seat fits any car and works on any 12-volt system.
Well, there's two people making a left turn. There's a pedestrian walking across the road down there and a guy turning left. And oh, I'm sorry, it caught me talking to myself, but I'll explain it all later on Kenzie's Corner.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
If you see a driver who appears to be talking to himself, there's several possibilities. Maybe he is crazy, maybe he's singing along to the radio or talking on his hands-free cellular telephone. Or maybe he's doing something we call commentary driving. Now, this is a technique that encourages people to look well down the road and to identify any problems that they may see. It's a simple technique. All you do is verbalize any situations that you see that could be potential danger spots. For example, I'm on an urban street here. It's raining out, which causes a lot of danger for starters. I've got a red light up ahead of me, so I'm going to have to be aware of that. I've got a row of parked cars along the right-hand side. I have to be aware of kids who may be jumping out in front of them. Anytime you're driving in the rain, you've got to be aware that people with umbrellas may not have the same amount of visibility. Up ahead of me, I've got a car with its four-way flashers on. I've got to be aware of that. The car beside me is turning left. The two taxis are going straight through, so I have to pass the car turning left, pull in behind the taxis, and proceed. I've got pedestrians on the side streets. I've got a driver in a parked car here who appears to be not paying attention. What else is new? I've got traffic coming towards me. I've got side streets that may have cars coming out on them. They both appear to be clear at the moment. This sort of running commentary gets a little boring after a while, but it does help you focus on what's happening well down the road. Now, usually I'm whining and moaning about things on this show, but commentary driving is something I'm a big fan of. So why don't you give it a try? And don't be ashamed if you're caught talking to yourself in your car. Besides, it may be the only intelligent conversation you get all day. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, as you can see, the auction is still continuing here at the police pound. And remember, the next time your car is towed away, I would suggest you claim it real fast. Or who knows, you could find yourself down here at the pound bidding against all these people to buy back your car. Wouldn't that make your day? Well, that's it for now, but we'll see you next week for more stories on Motoring 91.
Motoring 91 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Number 6 is an 82 Audi 5000. There's a good one. This is what we've been waiting for. He'll give me $500 started away, lot number 6. $500 somebody, $100 a bid, now 125, now 150, 150 now 175, 150 now 175, 150, 175, now 200, 200 now 2 1/4, 2 1/4 now 2 1/2. At 2 1/2 now 275, 250 now 275, at 250 now 275, 275 now $300. At 275 is all I bid, now 300. Give me 300, put your hand up again. $300 a bid, at 3 1/4 now 3 1/2. At 3 1/2 now 375, 350 now 375. Should be $1,000. At 350 now 375. At 350 the gentleman's bid, your bid at 350. 375 to 400, now you're out.